All right, thank you. It's great to see everyone out here tonight. This is actually our first public speaking of CRIA, so it's very good to see such a large audience for our first event. The Cultural Research Institute of Acadiana, CRIA, which in French is to cry out, was started 2007, so it's been around about 2 years, but of course the first year or two have been spent just getting everything together, making us a nonprofit organization, trying to get organized so that we could be ready to take our task at hand. CRIA was inspired in part by a trip I took about 10 years ago down to Lydia, Louisiana on the way to Super Bowl Point. We were going to Million Dollar Beach, Million Dollar Beach on Shark Bayou and all that. And we stopped. They had a little house on the side of the road in Lydia, and it had a sign that read "Homegrown" out front. So we stopped, my uncle and I, and it was a little lady, and she welcomed us into her greenhouse, and she sold us heirloom seedlings for 25 cents a piece in little coffee cups. And, I just thought, how cool is that this lady has been keeping her seeds, for who knows how long, and is selling them for 25 cents out of used coffee cups. I mean, it's just the whole thing. It's all about, for them it's about sustaining themselves and helping ourselves to sustain ourselves. And that's, the main objective of CRIA is to collect information, knowledge, and seeds, which I'll talk about, in order to teach how to live sustainably here in South Louisiana, because our culture is so rich and full of all this information of how people did it when it was necessary. And today, of course, it's not necessary to live sustainably, but it is still very important. And as we're seeing, especially this year, it's become more and more important and maybe more necessary. Another thing that did it for me was following, we have our camp on Bayou Vermilion in Milton, and a man that lived next to our camp was Mr. Sidney Bork. And Sidney, he died about, 15 years ago, and I used to go follow him around when I was just a little 5-year-old or something, and I'd go follow him around his farm, and he had everything you could think of, every kind of animal, every kind of crop, and he didn't speak a word of English. And we met his daughter more recently, just in the last 5 years, and she told us, how he didn't really even have a name, never borrowed money, probably didn't have so he basically lived out on his own completely and was fully self-sustaining, and he is maybe the last of many that have done that, and there's definitely still some around, but we want to try and reach all these people that have this knowledge and who know how to live like this before they're gone. Our first program that we're focused on for CRIA is the Acadiana Seed Bank, and that's what we're here to talk about tonight. Of course, CRIA is an umbrella, and as the palmetto has many fronds, we have all sorts of knowledge and different areas that can be studied and researched, such as sustainable building and agriculture and language and music, which have both had so much research done. We don't think we need to focus on that, but it'll definitely be a part. And, in traiteurs and medicine and all the folklore of South Louisiana. And the Acadiana Seed Bank is basically a bank of heirloom open pollinated seeds that we are collecting from people that have been keeping these strains of seeds going for different years, at least 5 years, but some of them 60 to 70 years and maybe longer. So this is the seeds of our heritage, and in French I believe it would be le grand héritage. That's what one person told me for heirloom seeds in French. And this is one tangible and very important piece of our history that we want to focus on. So that's why it's our first program. cultures like ourselves, Cajun, Creole, South Louisiana, whatever, all the different types of people and culture that make us here in South Louisiana what we are, can't be sustained without sustainability, as in agriculture, as in lifestyle, because once we become dependent on outside sources, that decreases our chances of sustaining our own culture. So to sustain our own culture, one thing that we have to look into is our agriculture. And that's, part of our whole base is being connected to the land, to the seasons, to the moon cycles, as Ray Brasser was just telling me. How a lot of elder generations, lived by the moon, lived by the seasons without an education, and they did it very well, even though a lot of them didn't have another choice. But, to sustain our culture, CRIA, we're going to try to we have a small start of our seed bank. I'll be telling you all about that. But we're also going to have a online sustainable living database called La Récolte, which means the harvest in French. And this will be a collection of all the information that we've obtained from our seed donors and knowledge donors, which goes beyond just agriculture, but will go into architecture and all the other things I mentioned before. This is a house that Mr. J.D. Swallow of Lance Bleu, of Point Bleu, he had moved out to his house because his neighbor or whoever it was gonna burn it because he was finished with it. He said, "No, you don't have to burn it. I'll take it." It's a full bousillage, in and out house, and he took Ashley and I through it. It's an amazing old house, but that's his little part to sustain that, and it's just a model that we can use to see, how people built like this, how people live like this, and as you can see, it's an exposed bousillage front. And it's got gardens all around it, so it's kind of a little model house. But the sustainability of it is what's as important. The walls are made out of earth and moss themselves, and when they ran out of moss, they used rice. What you call it? Not hulls, straw. Thank you. And so. The agricultural knowledge of the people of South Louisiana has been something that's been passed on from generation to generation and from neighbors to friends. This was our first seed interview, and this was in January of this year. This is Miss Florella Vijay Inhern, and she's a native of Opelousas, and she's actually, if anyone knows about the Orphan Train Society, she was descendant of the orphans who came down from New York, but that's not important on this subject. But this is her freezer full of her seeds that she's been collecting and has inherited from her mom. And so she was gracious to take us in and show us everything that she has learned in her long life. She's actually stopped gardening, but she only stopped a couple years ago, and she happened to have a freezer full of seeds, which we stumbled on accidentally after already starting the Acadiana seed bank. And so she is, in our first interview, we collected longhorn okra that she got from her mom, rattlesnake pole beans, coton jaune, which is yellow cotton or brown cotton, coton blanc, white cotton, and mamou seeds, of course. And just so y'all know, when you're way out, we have a couple of the seeds here on display you can look at with our brochures. So Miss Florella, she gave us 5 different varieties of seeds, and she gave us evergreen onion tops, which we plant in our garden. You don't do them by seeds, but and she also told us about the things that she knew from her past. One being, of course, the infamous mamou plant, which comes from the Prairie Mamou and all over around the area. And it has a very important role as a medicinal. If you have a sore throat, you can make a cough syrup and actually, I believe it was Bill Fontenot who told me that he actually saw his family had a pharmacy in Ville Platte, and that he believed they still had an old bottle of Mamou syrup that they used to sell at the pharmacy. And I'm sure there's a lot of stories like that. So these are actually the seeds that Miss Flo gave us. And we're actually going to try to grow some of these out to distribute. Since we've been talking about it, a lot of people have said how they would like a Mamou plant in their yard. So that's going to be another one of our goals with the seed bank, is growing these seeds out and multiplying the seeds. And the ultimate goal will be a local food source, of course, which is, the most important thing we could do with our seed bank. It wouldn't do any good in the freezer. But we are, like she said, we're having our fundraiser next month. And one of the objects of the fundraiser will be to gather enough money to buy a scientific freezer, which will keep them viable up to 100 years. And right now they're just in my freezer, but I do have a generator if the hurricanes come. So agriculture's place in our culture, it's connected in every walk of life, from medicine, as we showed you. As Miss Ethel May Borg, Sydney's daughter, told us that all the songs that she learned from Sydney, she learned from working in the fields with him. And music, language, it all has to do with agriculture. A lot of music, I'm sure, has been kept alive in the fields and created in the fields. What a better way to get through a long day than, humming a song or singing a song or making up a song. And then, of course, food is part of our culture. And this was just a couple weeks ago. We had a little crawfish boil. And, it doesn't have anything to do with the seeds, but with the sustainability and the diversity that exists around here, agriculturally and culinary. Rice and crawfish are grown together. And I'm not sure if anyone's heard of this, but there's actually a Japanese farmer, I believe he's passed now, but his name was Fukuoka. And he had a book called The One Straw Revolution. And he actually grew crawfish. This was in Japan, saying that with one straw of rice, you could take the seeds off of that one straw and create enough food to feed the world, because, of course, seeds multiply. And he grew his rice and patties with crawfish, with ducks, and he had satsuma orchards all around that he inherited from his grandfather. So all the way in Japan, very similar to what, could be here and what is here. Satsumas, crawfish, rice. But to have sustainability, we need diversity. And the Acadiana Seed Bank's goal is to establish a very diverse collection of seeds that we can distribute in a couple different ways to our community, through food, through seeds, through knowledge. And to sustain our culture, diversity is key. And it's just as I'm using culture and agriculture as a symbol, to sustain agriculture, you need diversity. If you have all your eggs in one basket and something happens, you get a bad disease on your crops, the whole thing's gone. So to have a diverse system, you have a much higher chance of surviving, because, if one thing goes bad, well, you have many other things to fall back on. You can look at it as financial terms too, which is, very important today. Diverse investments, if one thing crashes, and if you have everything in there, it's gone. But so, to have a diverse model is what we're going to focus on in the future. This year is focused on collecting the seeds. Next year we're going to focus on collecting, but also growing out the seeds and proliferating our seed bank. In speaking of diversity, we have such a diverse group of, or such a diverse background of people here in South Louisiana, from French, Creole, French, Spanish, Italian, African, German, Native American, and all of these cultures have made contributions to agriculture over the years. The okra right here, of course, comes from Africa, and in French is gumbo févi. And of course, everyone always talks about how gumbo is a perfect symbol for Louisiana because you have the French roux, and it's an African word, and you know, all the different ingredients and the bay leaves, and you know, and it's just like our music. You know, you have the German accordion and the Spanish Segura brothers, and the singing a French song with a German polka rhythm with African rhythms, and so gumbo févi and okra is a symbol for the diversity here in South Louisiana, and this is actually Miss Florella's seeds that she had passed to us. So we've gathered 16 seeds to date, and this has been 3 interviews that we've done, and one person we were supposed to interview around Mardi Gras, but it was too busy, so she actually stuck them in the mail and just sent them over. I never even got to her house. But so we've gotten the 5 I told you about with Miss Flo, and we have coton vade, which is a green cotton that I'm sure Miss Yvette knows about, and apparently you have to boil it to get the green out, but we got that from Mr. J.D. Swallow. Miss Rebecca Henry of Opelousas sent us some more mamu seeds and loofah gourds, which are useful for cleaning yourself or dishes, all kind of things once they dry out. Other gourds, which are useful for cups and bowls and all kind of things. Gourds are a very useful plant. And then just yesterday, I actually decided that I'm going to go see if the people in Lydia were still there. You know, I know that Lydia had gotten a good bit of hurricane damage. And when my uncle and I had gone on our way to Silver Point, you know, I was so impressed with the lady. I didn't know who she was or anything. So yesterday I decided to go back and see if they were there. And I had actually, it had completely slipped my memory. I had started the Acadiana seed bank and CRIA and everything, and just realized just a couple of weeks ago, I said, man, it definitely all goes back to those people in Lydia. So I went and picked up my cousin yesterday, and we rode down there, and I had to go real slow and see if I recognized the house and look for the homegrown sign, but it wasn't there. And I stopped at some neighbors, and they were walking in, but I yelled at them, and they kept walking, see if they know who grows food around here. And it was right there behind me. I looked back, and I saw the greenhouse, or a piece of it, because the larger half had been devastated in one of the last hurricanes. And so I went to the door, and Mr. Lester Broussard answered. He said, "Can I help you?" I said, "Yes, I had come back here 10 years ago, and I talked to a lady. It must have been your wife or your daughter." And he said, "Yeah, well, she's right here. That's Miss Margaret." And she came out, and they took us in. They showed us everything that they grow. And he's 75 years old, and they had about 3 acres in production, all by hand, except for their plow. He has an old mule plow, but he has it attached to a 4-wheeler. And so he drives, or she drives the 4-wheeler, and he walks the plow behind. I said, "It stays up by itself?" He said, "No, it's just like a mule. You walk behind it." I said, "Man, that's good." So, and I definitely have to go back there and continue our interview with him. But he's already, has taught us so much. He mulches all of his crops. He puts a good foot of mulch that he hand forks from his field. He goes and cuts it with his tractor, and then he loads it in the truck while his wife drives. 75 years old, and then stacks it up, composts some of it, and sticks the rest in the compost and puts all of it on his garden. Mulch is very important because it keeps your soil protected from the sun, protected from the rain, the wind. It keeps your soil moist, keeps the weeds down. So, these things that he was practicing is very, very sustainable. And that's, what we're going to focus on is the sustainability of it. But the Acadiana Seed Bank would not be possible. I mean, I did a little bit of college. I went into sustainable agriculture for a semester. I went to music to a semester, but I don't like school much, so I just decided to do it on my own. I play music, and and I always wanted to grow food, but I got too busy with music, so I'm finally getting around to getting back into it. And I always used to keep a garden at my grandma's in high school, and then I'd go travel to play music, and the horses would break in and eat my garden. So I still have a couple things to learn, but actually, while I was playing music up in Wisconsin a couple years ago, I was taking a break on a bench, and I met a person who is here tonight, Miss Kristen Kordecki, and she ended up moving down to Louisiana and becoming our seed technician. So we were very fortunate, to have the expertise of someone that used to run the germination operation at the Chicago Botanic Gardens seed bank, the Tallgrass Prairie Seed Bank. And it's a seed bank of not only prairie seeds, but a diversity of seeds. So I'm actually going to call Kristen Kordecki up, and she's going to explain to y'all seed-saving techniques. All
Hi,
right.
I'm Kristen. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the technical aspects of saving seeds, and if you feel the necessity to shout out a question between Louie and myself and Ashley, who herself is becoming a great seed saver. Maybe we can answer some questions. If not, maybe after the program we'll be able to do that. Does everybody hear me okay? Okay. I'll try to get us through this pretty quick. First of all, I wanted to start with defining what the open pollinated flowers are, the open pollinated plants are, so that we start from a good baseline. If you want to go home, start your gardens, collect some seeds, participate in CRIA, we're going to kind of give you some baseline information to do that with. So I wanted to first ask, how many people here garden in their backyards? Okay, that's quite a bit. How many of you are planting some heirloom seeds? Okay, that's a good amount. How many of you have received these heirloom seeds from your family? Okay. How many of you have purchased them from a seed store or maybe online? Okay. Okay, so we know that open pollinated seeds are ones that are pollinated by the wind, through animals, water sources. We will pollinate plants as well. These are all natural occurrences. And so we want open pollinated seeds to be the first thing you start with. We want you to know that they are true to their parents, and they have the characteristics of both their parents, and they're not genetically modified. So if you go to the store and you purchase seedlings or seeds, you're in general not going to be purchasing heirloom plants. That's an important place to start. So we know that heirloom plants maybe go as far back as 100 years. It's debatable. Some people say 50 years, maybe right around World War II. Are y'all familiar with the Victory Gardens? Yeah, okay, so that's kind of the starting point that a lot of gardeners start with as being a definition for heirloom. We also know that quietly generations are passing these seeds down from family to family, and they're really the backbone of food sources in especially critical times. Really popular ones that you can buy online or at farmers markets, the Brandywine. And I came across this one that I think is so pertinent to right now, the mortgage lifter tomato. I need to get some of those. But apparently this man, he sold each of the seedlings for $1 a piece, and was able to pay his mortgage off with it. I don't know the whole story, but I thought it was kind of cute and appropriate for this year. Heirlooms, as you probably know, are ugly. You have to love them for their taste. Heirloom tomatoes, that's what I'll focus on the most because I think we're most familiar with heirloom tomatoes. But generally, they're pretty ugly. You can see the eggplants here. They come in all these different variety of colors and sizes. They're knotty, they're craggy, but they're delicious. And that's why they kind of stay in the whole gardening lineage. They're not used commercially for a couple different reasons. They are knotty, they are craggy, they're irregular, they're kind of like each of us. They don't transport well, and they go to rot pretty easily. And so the companies that are doing big agribusiness can't afford to ship those. And so they quietly stay in our backyards. They, as Louis has talked about, they're adapted. They tend to be adapted to our local environments. They know how to resist some of the diseases and some of the insects. They can tolerate some of the humidity and the heat in certain regions better than others. So one of the things that makes this project so special and so unique is that the genetic diversity of our food source is dying out with our older generations. We know that when people pass, that there are things left behind, and seeds are going to go into the garbage or out in the back and not be cared for and nurtured for. And so Louis and Ashley's vision is one that really impressed me. They wanted to ensure that that history is preserved right alongside with the music and the language. Not only do we want to know the history of these things, there's all these potentials for medicine that are hemmed up in these genetic profiles of these plants that we don't know yet. And so being able to preserve those is important for the human community as well. Local food sources, as we're starting to get back into hard economic times, local foods becomes more important. Trading foods becomes more important, and so this project is right in step, especially with these times. Just in the same breath, having these open food sources that we can share and we can trade with each other is so important and so critical in this century, because things are there's not a lot of diversity out there with food. And so we can keep that diversity right here in this room by making sure that we trade openly with each other. Okay, so we want to determine, this is the most important part of collecting heirloom seeds, is determine that they are heirloom. And you do that by going and talking to your family. Louis is doing that with Ashley, going out and talking with people and trying to identify what is an heirloom, where does it come from, how did you grow it, how did you cultivate that, how did you store it. Those things are so important. And if you do have an heirloom that's from your family, be sure to write it down. One of the things that's really helpful along with documenting some of those things is to make sure you photograph it from seed to seedling, through the flowering and then the fruiting stage as well. So, how many of you save seeds? Quite a bit of you. So, if you want to come up and share something, let me know. Okay, so we want saving seeds to be really simple. We want you to be involved. We want you to be involved for your own good. We'd love it if you would participate with CRIA at some point as well. We just want to give you a few things that you can do with some very basic, fruits and vegetables here. I'm going to give you a couple things that you'll need are just some window screen or newspaper, some of the flour sacks that are lint-free, some little muslin bags. If you don't know what they are, we have them up at the table in back with our samples. You'll need a sieve or a narrow colander and some glass jars. Y'all have that in your house, right? Most of it anyway. Okay, so collecting some of the fleshy fruits, tomatoes, peppers, eggplants. So you want to allow a fruit to go as ripe as possible, and then you want to cut it in half, squeeze out the seeds. I'm going to use a tomato here. And there's a couple different techniques. The really, really fun part of this for me is when I was at the Chicago Botanic Garden, I was working on native plants. And so we had a protocol. We had to do it this way. This is the way that worked. This is the scientific expectation of what we were doing. And here, I'm learning all these different ways that people are cultivating their plants. everyone has a different technique and they swear by it. And so I'm blown away, because when I was farming, I wasn't doing things some of the ways that they're doing here, but they work nonetheless. So I'm just giving you a few examples of things that that Louis has learned recently with the tomato. So people have suggested to him, rinse it off. You know, there's a little film that comes on that tomato, that little kind of gelatinous film. Well, that's a germination inhibitor over that seed. And it kind of stays on that seed so that it can protect itself and get itself in the ground and grow again. Well, we want to get that off. So we want to rinse it in warm water, put it through a sieve. Some people like to put it in jars of warm water and let that gelatin sink to the bottom, and then rinse it again and then dry it. I like to dry mine on a lint-free towel, or the window screens work. And so that's the easiest thing that you can do with tomato plants. Peppers, pretty much the same. You want to use a window screen. Some of the legumes, beans, okra, peas, mamu. I was just privileged recently. My neighbor, Mr. Murnus, came down the road, and we went out back and we found mamu plants in my backyard. So I actually got to clean some this week. So that was a lot of fun. So with legumes, you want to leave them right on the vine. You don't want to pick them. You want to let them dry until they get to like the rattle state, where you just kind of dangle them and you can hear it inside. After that, pull them off, let them dry a little bit longer, a couple days, and then crack them open. And then you want to ventilate them a little bit longer. And again, you want to store them in a glass jar. I'll get to that after this slide. Collecting seeds from bolts, flowers that come on after the vegetable is kind of done producing. Broccoli, cabbage, lettuce, spinach, basil, dill, those other kinds of little herbs that you have in your backyard. A lot of people like to go out and put bags right over the bolts and then just clip them, put them right in. You can do that. You can pull them out. Some of them don't really need to be dried because they're pretty dry. But to be sure, make sure you dry on the screen for at least 24 hours. And so this is the important part, and this is kind of where the backyard gardener and CRIA are starting to separate when we start storing seeds. At home, the best way to store seeds is in glass jars. If you have colored glass jars, that's going to be the most useful. You don't want a lot of light. You don't want a lot of moisture. You want to refrain from taking them in and out of the refrigerator. And you want to make sure that you're using your seeds within 5 years, because the viability will lessen. CRIA is looking towards having a long-term impact on the seed sources in Acadiana. And having our scientific freezer is going to provide that opportunity for us and for you to preserve that culture. And so we invite you to participate with us, and we can come pick seeds up from you. We can come and teach you how to do some of these things. If you decide that you want to prepare things in the manner that you're most accustomed to, please do so. And then when you decide to send those seeds to us, please write down everything that you do with your preparation. We'd love to know your preparation tactics as well. If you could give us information about where it is that you collected or you received your seeds, that would be the most helpful. So that was the technical, boring aspect of it, and I'm going to let Louis get back to telling us stories.
Oh, if you want to grow out seeds of your Oh yeah, yeah. That. Yeah, as far as having other people help grow out, that's definitely going to be a lot. I mean, that's going to be the larger part of the workload. Exactly. So yeah, we definitely, and that's one thing that I was going to talk about soon was we want to communicate with all of the different experts and organizations that that specialize in different things, such as Earthshare and Vermilionville, and people as Ray and Ed Cajuns, and everyone who has all this knowledge. We want to act as on our own to help preserve this knowledge, and we want to pick your brains and share the resources with everyone and do our best to make it a community effort. And I definitely believe that, especially starting next year, that growing them out is going to be a huge task. So we definitely will need all the help we can get with that. So we definitely like to talk to these organizations and people about that. Maybe a couple seeds here, a couple seeds there, and try to send them out so they don't get cross-pollinated too much and things like that. And yes, sir. Ornamental could be good too. I mean, we say medicinal, edible, and generally useful. So I mean, aesthetic is definitely useful. I'm going to talk about. We're going to do a question and answer after, and right now I'm going to talk about why it's important that we have these heirloom seeds. This is the next generation. He's actually in the back somewhere. Here's little Julian, and that's my grandma's hand. They're holding a bay leaf. And, it's just symbolic of passing it on to the next generation. But what are we passing on? Well, just as we want to pass on our culture, our language, our knowledge of how to live, our knowledge of our own families and where we come from, the heirloom seeds hold within themselves knowledge just as we do. Heirloom seeds are genetically, that's why we've been keeping them, is because you keep the best seed, you keep the best fruits for seeds, so they're genetically superior to, a lot of things you might buy in the store. Not to say, but that's why we want to keep these heirloom seeds, is to continue this knowledge, continue the knowledge and what is in the genetics of these plants, and what place they have in our life. So, just as we want to do our best to communicate the knowledge that people such as Ed and Ray have worked so hard to accumulate over their lifetime, and all kind of people in this room and all in the Acadiana, that's what we want to do with the knowledge as well as the seeds. Things such as bousillage. This is me. We built a bousillage wall at our house, and it was a very long process, a very just labor intensive, and just understanding how it worked, and understanding how much moss you need. We got 400 pounds from a man that Ed had directed me to in Catahoula, and it only went about that high on our wall. So I had to go and I had to collect another 600 on my own. So I made 1,000 pounds of moss just for one wall, 30 by 9 with big doors. So this is the types of things that we would, sustainable living. I mean, a bousillage wall is such a great example because you have the cypress tree, you have the mud that it's in and the moss that's hanging off of it, and right there, that's your whole house right there. I mean, it's stuff that's free, it's sustainable if harvested correctly, and it's environmentally clean, if harvested correctly. One thing that we would like to that we're going to be focusing on is trying to get seeds from the diverse peoples of Louisiana. This is Mr. Lester and Miss Margaret, who I visited yesterday in Lydia. He's a Broussard, he's Cajun. We're actually probably related, I found out, but I'm sure if you talk to anyone long enough, you'll realize that. But so all the different ethnicities that I talked about earlier, and we'd like to try to represent all the different parishes. So, right now we have St. Landry, Evangeline, and Iberia. And I saw all the people that raised their hands in here who save seeds. We'd be very honored if you'd like to share your seeds with the Acadiana Seed Bank so that we can share them with future generations and current generations. And we try to represent as much of South Louisiana, if not more, as we can. I know places like Terrebonne and Lafourche. I mean, they're so isolated and they have so much rich history, but they're also so endangered to natural disaster that it's a lot harder to hold on to things, as it is say in St. Landry Parish. It's a little further from the coast. We have an interview scheduled with a Native American in Ile-Jean-Charles for next month, and we're hoping. Well, I just know we have an interview, but I don't know if she has seeds anymore. The person that's lining up the interview for us said that her whole garden was wiped out by Ike. So we don't know if she's going to have any seeds or if she kept them in her freezer or what. So we'd like to try to focus on these areas that are more disaster prone, and as our culture depends on our wetlands and our land, so does preserving these seeds. So that's basically our mission for now, and with the Acadiana Seed Bank and La Récolte. CRIA will have other things going on. We have a fundraiser April 5th at the Blue Moon that we told y'all about, and like I said, that's to raise money to buy a scientific freezer and any other things. We've basically done everything we've done on very minimal input. We've had a couple in-kind donations. We received one grant, which is actually to get tax-exempt status, which we've still not received from the IRS so that we can apply for larger grants, but it's in the application works for 7 months, so we're waiting for it to come back. But I'm actually going to take this opportunity to let Mr. Whitney Broussard tell you about a couple other projects we have going on, then we're going to do a question and answer. And I know Jennifer has some other things.
My name is Whitney Broussard. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at UL Lafayette, and it's an honor to sit on the board and work with CRIA. I'm going to talk to you just briefly about two outreach projects that we have going on right now under the CRIA umbrella. And the first is to work with CSET and LSU and the Acadian Museum to bring a museum exhibit permanently on display to the Acadian Museum that I was a part of. We had a few PhD students go to Nova Scotia and New Brunswick to study the agricultural techniques of the early Acadians. So we call it farming the wetlands of Old Acadie, 17th century reclamation to present day restoration. It's a long title. And but we studied the Aboiteau system and how the early Acadians were incredibly technical and wonderful agriculturalists in the Bay of Fundy to reclaim the higher reaches of the tidal salt marshes and use those reclaimed areas for hay and wheat production. So we have a wonderful exhibit that will be on display permanently at Acadian Museum. And if I can shamelessly put in a plug, we'll have a presentation through this series for that exhibit in November. So that'll be great. Y'all come back in November. We're already on the books. So the second thing that we're working with is to sponsor the Lost Bayou Ramblers to go to the Sangwon Watershed Celebration. This is going to be in Decatur, Illinois, and Decatur, they are interested in nutrient pollution and contamination from conventional agricultural practices making their way into the Mississippi River, and how that is making its way to the coast of Louisiana and connected to the dead zone off the coast. So they're very interested in our ecological health, and we're very interested in their agricultural health. And so we're going to go up there and give a presentation about Louisiana, our landscape, our coastline, and the Gulf of Mexico, and do it with do it with stories and do it with song, and then have a good old dance afterwards. So that's going to be in June, and we'll look forward to working with you all very much more in the future. Quite a lot going on. So thank you all for coming out. Thank you.
I want to give a thank you to Jennifer and Carl Brasso, who came out to our house a couple years ago and encouraged us to pursue this. So I just wanted to thank y'all for the encouragement of CSET and the whole group. All right. Well, thank y'all so much for coming out.